Meditators, welcome to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. Joining us for the second time is Joseph Young. He is an analyst at 𝐻𝐻𝐻, one of the largest crypto funds in Asia. He's also a writer at Forbes and does a lot of stuff on the side involved in the crypto space as well. Joseph, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
So you were one of our most popular episodes when you did come out, and our audience absolutely loved it, because you offer a lot of unique insight into the Eastern markets that doesn't quite come over as publicly into the West. Why do you think there's a little bit of disconnect between specifically how the Asian markets are behaving and what the sentiment is there, and the West really understanding that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance and a lot of concepts missing between the West and Asia. Like in order to understand the Asian market, like you need to understand the structure and what people are like really focusing on. Like for example, a lot of the DeFi stuff like Avalanche and Solana aren't, that popular in Korea, but like in Korea or like in China, they do still focus on altcoins like XRP or Clayton, which are not very familiar to the West. So there are these kind of differences between the markets, and I think the gap is closing, but there's definitely still a big gap left.
And what would you recommend for a, say, Western market analyst, speculator, retail trader, just someone in the crypto space that wants to know more? What's the best way to keep a good temperature on the Eastern markets?
Honestly, the best way is to actually spend a lot of time in the exchange forums. Like for example, the biggest exchanges in Korea, for example, like Upbit and Bitsum, like there are forums where people talk about, tokens and what's hot at that time and what people's thoughts are, and it almost feels like because in Asia we don't really use Twitter a lot, so in a sense like those forums on exchanges, like the top exchanges, they kind of substitute Twitter. So those would be like the best places to go.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought Twitter is quite global. Why do you think they don't like Twitter much? It just hasn't caught on there. It's too much English, and they prefer native languages, or
I mean, there are a lot of like English speaking users using Twitter for sure, but in Korea and in Japan, things like Line or Kakao, like the native messaging apps, have like 93% dominance over their native markets. So like naturally, people uh, tend to use what they've always been using.
do you feel you have a bit of an edge with where you stand right now? Because I know you're super involved in both sides of the market.
I don't know if you can explain it as an edge, but I'm in a unique position where I can definitely feel like both sides of the market for sure, like how Asia is feeling about the market and how the West is feeling about the market.
Well, right now the Twitter sentiment seems to be pretty bearish. We've got, as far as the technicals are concerned, we had a top, and what we've got now is a bit of a macro lower high. At least it's shaping up to be that. We're seeing a little bit of bouncing up and down, but the general direction is downwards. There's a little bit of panic going around. What are your thoughts on the market right now?
Yeah, I think obviously a lot of panic selling came from the Evergrande situation in China, right? The biggest real estate developer going, on the brink of bankruptcy. And I've always said on Twitter, like before the whole drop happened, that um, number one, like there's no retail demand in Asia, so that could be a good thing and a bad thing, in the sense that if there's a catalyst for a downtrend with no retail demand, the market was going to fall, like as it did. But then if the retail demand catches up at the price range that we were, like Bitcoin was at like high 40K, ETH was at 3,000, 600, 500, then it could like really explode. But crypto prices were stagnant at that price range for a long time, and it was like waiting for a catalyst to come to bring everything down, and that catalyst happened to be Evergrande. So I think everyone is bearish for that reason. But I think there are two important things to consider. The first one is like the Chinese sort of financial sector squeezed Evergrande in a way. They put a lot of pressure on it. So my thinking was that if they're the one triggering this, they must have had a backup plan, right? And I don't really resonate that this would translate to like the new Lehman Brothers of Asia, because there were also other options. Like for example, like other major real estate developers in China could buy Evergrande assets and ease off a lot of pressure on bank utility and the liquidity crisis that could happen. So I never thought that the Lehman crisis that everyone was concerned about would ever happen. So I think there was a lot of overreaction in the market. And I think the second thing is that the overreaction was really intense because the markets were closed for a while, because it was national holiday season in China and Korea. So the market was closed for I think 2 or 3 days, and so there were a lot of anticipation as to like how the market would shape up after it opens, following the Evergrande fiasco, and then yeah, the market did what it did. So, but I think considering those two things, I think both crypto and equities would shape up for a recovery.
So you think it's going to recover? Do you think we've got more to this Evergrande story that hasn't come out yet? More things which could develop from it, or has that chapter closed?
I think I think the Chinese regulators wanted to teach the real estate developers in China a lesson in a way, but Evergrande actually paid their local reports are saying that Evergrande has committed like their payment to the first interest payment. So I think a lot of pressure has come down from the Evergrande situation. And like I can tell you, like I've been speaking to a lot of on the ground like analysts and investors, like large investors in Hong Kong and China and also in Korea, and there was definitely like a big sense of panic. But then when I was talking to them today, they were quite relieved about it, to hear that Evergrande made their first payment. And it's obviously like it's only the first payment of many to come, but many institutions expected Evergrande to not make this payment. So I think that relieves a ton of pressure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's typical to see those volatile overreactions to either scenario, whatever happens. So, outside of the Evergrande situation right now, as far as the macro market is concerned, where do you personally lie? Do you think we are in a neutral market, bull market, bear market, and why so?
I think we're in like a midterm bull market, but I also definitely see like consolidation happening for a long time. But I also am not thinking in the way, like for example, like if Bitcoin and Ethereum go up a lot, like the entire market would follow. Like I think we're seeing these trends where things like Avalanche and like Terra, these ecosystems are thriving. So like different altcoins are going up when Bitcoin and Ethereum aren't necessarily showing big strength, right? So I think it's going to be neutral to slightly bullish, but then a lot of the strong ecosystem native tokens like Avalanche, Solana, and Terra, I think those will be the ones that perform really strongly.
And how are you positioning yourself to take advantage of these ecosystems? Is it through the actual main assets like Solana or Avalanche, or are you going for projects within them that are already existing and strong, or are you going for more early stage projects within each industry? What is your personal strategy, and what do you think the pros and cons are of different types?
Yeah, I think I think the most ideal strategy is obviously to spot hold the main native tokens, right? So Solana, Avalanche, Terra, and different tokens, and I also try to participate in in like staking into new protocols. Like for example, Benki is a protocol that I really like on Avalanche, and I've spoken to many Avalanche developers, and they're very happy with the total value locked growing as fast as it did. And I think very interesting projects are coming on Terra, and there are major upgrades that are happening with these protocols. So I think mostly spot holding the native tokens, and then staking like early stage tokens or supporting projects. Yeah.
And so, Benki, also a fan of the project, would you, so you'd expose yourself to the asset and then stake it on the platform itself?
Right. Yeah. Mostly.
Awesome. And how do you decide which one between like Solana, Avalanche, Terra? Do you try to spot the narratives and jump from one to another, or do you like to take more long-term strategies when it comes to them?
Yeah, I think long-term strategies are definitely ideal, but at the same time, there are different narratives that are like going around from time to time. Like for example, I think the infrastructure layer projects in Avalanche have been doing very well, like Benki, and then on Solana, recently obviously a lot of metaverse and like top-tier crypto games have been coming up on Solana as well as NFT projects. Solana has been heavily associated with metaverse side of things, and then on Terra, with Mirror, supporting synthetic assets, a lot of sort of financial services related services have been doing very well on Terra. So I think it's important to associate certain blockchains with their specialties or projects that are doing particularly well on those ecosystems and focusing on those.
Uh, it's you recently I've been thinking a lot about NFTs on Solana, and it's shown me for the first time how when a market is exploding, if something like Ethereum isn't ready to handle it at the level the public want. For example, it's just too expensive right now to do a lot of the things you'd want to do on Ethereum unless you were to use the layer 2. And we've seen the market say, I don't want to wait. I'm happy to use Solana right now, even if it has certain trade-offs like decentralization. Solana, you can argue, is a lot more centralized than Ethereum. Do you think this is a threat to Ethereum going forward?
I don't think it's going to be a threat per se because I think Ethereum it's already established itself as like the base DeFi protocol. But like if you see the new projects, NFT projects going up on Solana, like the vibe of the projects is definitely like different from Ethereum. Like it's a little bit like like space, like modern, like um, like there are certain vibes that are associated with different blockchains, and so I don't think each one would fight for like a market to take control of, but rather I think it's a one massive market where there are different participants like Solana, Ethereum, will just continue to coexist.
That's such an interesting perspective that each one will develop its own culture, almost like a country, and they'll be separated in their own ways. I haven't quite looked at it that way before.
Yeah, and in my perspective, I think it'll just continue to be that way, and yeah, and like the ecosystems have been growing so quickly, but then also they have such loyal user bases like Solana, Terra, like they have users that would only stick to those blockchains. So there's also that sense of loyalty to the blockchains that you use.
Yeah, that definitely is. And again, that's something which naturally comes from culture. You get people who get used to it, get comfortable with it, start to really like it, start to reject other ones, and they're not going to really want to use anything else after that as well. Jay, you and I spoke before the podcast, and you said you have some interesting insights right now into the Southeast Asian market that you were hoping to share. I'd love to dive into those.
Sure, yeah. So obviously the Southeast Asian metaverse market has become like massive recently, right? Like with the rise of Axie Infinity. Like I'm in the Philippines and in Vietnam a lot, and I can say like everyone, like literally everyone that I like, see across the street or see in a cafe, they're playing one of these crypto games, right? So that option is there. But what's really interesting is even though Axie is like, like Ethereum focused, um, like 83% of users on Coin98 wallet, for example, which is the biggest cross-chain wallet in Southeast Asia, like about 400, 500,000 users, are using Binance Smart Chain. So that's actually one of the data points that I really wanted to talk about because there was the sentiment that like Binance Smart Chain would wear off after like the first blast of user activity and hype, and that certainly seemed like the case in like July to October, but then the Binance Smart Chain demand keeps on coming back. So it seems like Binance Smart Chain is going blowing up again, and then going down, but then it just comes back again and again and again. I think that has a lot to do with PancakeSwap. I think a lot of retail users in Asia really resonate with that sort of AMM, like playful, a lot of features. It's like an ecosystem of its own. So yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to emphasize. Like, different regions prioritize or like different blockchains for different reasons. So yeah, 83% of Vietnamese users using Coin98 coming from Binance Smart Chain. I thought that was really interesting.
That is really interesting and surprising to me as well. I also want to dive back into the metaverse stuff you mentioned, but before that, why do you think there's such a demand? Like, we've got the playful nature of it, but surely we can build a playful app on Ethereum or Solana, or if there's so much demand, someone in the Asian markets would build the equivalent of a pancake swap on a different chain. What particularly about BSC is drawing people to it? Is it Binance's just a large presence in the area that makes people comfortable and makes people trust it?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. But I give a lot of credit to the PancakeSwap team, because I think the whole concept they made with like naming the features, like for example lottery, um, like I think the retail users really like that, like using animations, using the user interface in such a way that it doesn't feel like you're using a DEX. It almost feels like you're using Binance itself. And so I think those little things, and once, like I've really noticed, like once people start using like some kind of blockchain, it is very difficult for them to switch over to a new one, and they typically don't want to do it. So I think that's what's happened with Binance Smart Chain in Southeast Asia.
You know, that's so true. Even like, I'd consider myself reasonably advanced. I've been in the space for 5 years. I got into yield farming, not early, but also not late, at a point where I could definitely profit off of it, specifically ETH. But I did not move off of the Ethereum chain for so long. It cost me loads of money because there was so much opportunity outside of Ethereum. But there's such a high perceived barrier to entry, the learning curve of a new blockchain, and also like the risk. If you mess up, it's very high risk. You make one mistake and it can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the one of the things that Binance Smart Chain had an edge early on was the MetaMask connection. So it was very easy to use MetaMask on PancakeSwap and the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem. So there was a very low barrier of entry. And so with that, a lot of retail users just flooded in. So I think that's a very important element to consider.
So I've actually checked out the Coin98 wallet and it looks incredible. In fact, I'd argue much better than Metamask. That's not saying much though, because there are a lot of competitors coming out now, much better than, in my opinion, better UI, better features, just more comfortable and easy to use than Metamask. How long do you think it is before like Metamask sees some real competition and starts to lose a lot of market share?
I stand on the side that MetaMask won't lose market share, because I believe in like consolidation. So it's kind of like Uniswap, how Uniswap and OpenSea like really strengthen their positions as the leaders of NFT and AMM. So I think the same would happen to MetaMask. I think it's too late for a new wallet to challenge MetaMask in the space that they already excel at. Like Coin98, for example, like it's the only wallet in the space that allows you to hold like 13, 14 blockchain tokens at once, like Solana, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, and everything. So, um, but I think they're targeting a different market that is like completely cross-chain. So, I think MetaMask would remain like dominant as it is, and then there would be different wallets like Coin98 that would be challenging in the cross-chain space and also like regional spaces.
So just from a pure pros and cons perspective, why would I use MetaMask over Coin98, assuming I'm new to the market and I'm not comfortable with either yet?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I think if you're not comfortable with either one yet, I think most people would choose Coin98 or other wallets that have cross-chain capability, because like for example, like Coin98 built the cross-chain capability like a year before most competitors kind of started it. Um, but then there are other like really promising cross-chain wallets out there like XDeFi and Liquidity, but um, but then existing users that use MetaMask, like it's I think it's very difficult for them to move to a like a new wallet. Like it's difficult for an existing user to change even like a blockchain explorer. So like I don't think millions of MetaMask users would change the entire wallet and seeds and stuff to move to a new wallet. But and I think that's why Coinani is doing such a good job because they're attracting new users um, and growing very quickly.
Yeah, they definitely are. Also, you mentioned XDeFi, another great competitor that are they're really focusing on a sleek UI that's user friendly and easy to use. I think you're right in the short to medium term. It's going to be very difficult to touch MetaMask, but if crypto adoption continues to boom and a new wallet can come out with seamless UI that's easier, safer to use, with that's more cross-chain compatible, I could definitely see it taking MetaMask's place over something outside of the short to medium term. Jay, now you mentioned something very, very interesting, and that was what's going on in the Philippines, where you just see people playing these metaverse games, because, I mean, you can quite comfortably earn $500 a month, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but much higher than the salary most people make in a lot of the regions. So, firstly, what other games are people playing besides Axie Infinity, just from a personal curiosity point of view? And then secondly, what impact do you think this has going forward on, like, just income equality across the world? Do you think this could have a major impact on the entire world?
Yeah, I think in the Philippines and in Vietnam and in Thailand, uh, many users associate metaverse and crypto gaming with Axie Infinity. Like Axie Infinity has become metaverse in these regions. So there's really no competition. Everybody's playing Axie Infinity, like period. Like that's exactly what's happening. Like Axie Infinity is in the news. All the sort of like YouTubers and all everyone in these Southeast Asian countries are playing Axie Infinity, and I think new competitors could come in the future, but Axie Infinity is definitely in the level of like Uniswap and MetaMask, in the sense that they've already established their like absolute dominance in this region, um, when it comes to metaverse. And uh, yeah, I mean, if you look at the way like how YGG is powering the economy that people are using to earn more, like 3 or 4 times more what they would earn spending 8 hours a day working. Um, I think you know I think it's a game changer in these countries for sure, and even in countries like South Korea and Japan, um, that have like long history with crypto. Like people have been using crypto since 2013, 2014 with strong exchange infrastructure. People are earning good income with Axie Infinity, uh, and these games. So I only expect that the metaverse market and the crypto game market to continue booming. I think it's only the beginning.
Wow, it's crazy that it is only the beginning when it seems to, it feels like, I don't know, a top, if you will. Not that it actually is, but it's got all the signals. It's booming. It's going crazy. People are making fortunes playing a video game. How do you see it as sustainable? Do you see it as potentially damaging if so much of economic, like a country's people are spending their time earning money through this video game? Do you think that is going to be a drain on resources?
It could be. I mean, the Central Bank of the Philippines has recently come out with a policy suggestion to tax like Axie Infinity. So I think that's always a sign that it's always like a confirmation of strong growth and legitimacy, in my opinion, when regulators come out with that kind of thing. So the regulators are definitely noticing that. It's become big to that level where the government is looking at it.
Yeah, that's without a doubt huge that the government is starting to look at Axie Infinity, these cute little monsters that battle each other. And amazing to see how big businesses like YGG are growing. I mean, I know YGG recently did a token raise, and it's at like 600, $700 million valuation. Mind blowing, really. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this metaverse unfolds. Feels like we're at the brink of something world changing. Jay, it's been an absolute pleasure. It always is having you on. Before we wrap up the episode, are there any exciting topics that we didn't touch, that we didn't cover, that you'd like to share with the audience? Any hot thoughts you have on the market right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think on the Korean market, because not many people talk about the Korean market. Uh, I can definitely feel that crypto is has become less taboo because like a year or two ago, crypto was such a taboo topic in Korea. Like celebrities would sometimes even apologize for talking about crypto assets. But now, with Bitcoin and Ethereum at the price they are now, and a lot of these ecosystems continuously growing, the sentiment has changed from crypto like a taboo subject to crypto like the future of money. So that I really wanted to emphasize. So I'm very like that's why I'm very optimistic on like the entire crypto like Asian crypto market. And the second thing is the Korean government, the ruling party is actually suggesting to delay the taxation legislation in Korea. So that would ease a lot of the pressure on existing investors, traders, and just overall like DeFi users as well, if that legislation gets pushed for a year. And that is and that just shows regulators intend to become more intentional with the way they regulate crypto. And I think that's just another token of approval for what crypto assets are.
How relevant do you think the Korean market is overall?
I think very relevant. Like the Korean financial sector is like a it's like a kettle. Like it boils very quickly and then it cools down very quickly. But then when it boils very quickly, the power that comes from both the institutional market and the retail investors, it cannot be compared to other markets. So in that sense, it's always a wild card that's always there when the market needs it.
And you feel it's just starting to simmer right now, going into boil?
Right. I know. I think that's cooled down a bit because the kimchi premium went like below zero for the first time in like years, but then the kimchi premium is coming back now, with it being 5% for Bitcoin and some like 6% for altcoins. I think the demand is starting to come back again a little bit.
Uh,
We're seeing signs
jo-
of it.
Joseph, could you explain the Kimchi Premium and its significance for our audience?
Yeah, sure. So in the Korean market, it is like basically impossible to arbitrage it because it bans foreign investors from trading on exchanges. Like KYC is absolutely required, and if you have a foreign passport or foreign bank account, you cannot trade on those exchanges. So when crypto either the demand like starts going up really quickly or the price starts going up quickly, and then retail investors rush to buy those assets on leading exchanges in Korea, then the premium increases. Like the prices of Bitcoin and Ethereum becomes more expensive compared to the likes of Coinbase or other major exchanges. So it's usually a sign that retail investors are starting to come back.
And why is it retail and not institutional investors? Do institutional investors in Korea purchase in a different way?
I would say that institutional investors in Korea would go for custody services rather than exchanges. And I think for that reason, institutions are not that involved directly into crypto assets yet, mostly because the regulation around it is unclear. But if there are institutions buying, they would do it through custody services that are fully regulated over exchanges.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear all these promising developments going on in Southeast Asia and also other parts of Asia as well. Especially in market conditions like this, where a lot of people are hesitant, a lot of people are panicking. Jay, absolute pleasure as always. I know we'll have you back on the show very soon. You're an audience favorite without a doubt. Wishing you the best of luck, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Meditators, that's all from us. We'll see you next time.